Welcome to the Sedona Soul Sisters Show, down-to-earth discussions on metaphysics, spirituality, paranormal, and healing topics. The Sedona Soul Sisters are Terry Ann Russell, myself, Ivory Lanou, and Roz Reynolds, who might be joining us a little bit later. We have offices in Sedona, Arizona, where we see clients from all over the world. Today's topic is transforming challenges. So if you have questions about the topic today, please, you can raise your hand if you're live in the show and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question, or you're welcome to also type it into the show chat room and we'll answer your question live on the show. For those of you watching later on YouTube, you can email questions to us. You can email it to me and I'll get it to all the ladies. It's ivory@sedonasoulsisters.com. Happy to help you at any time. So, transforming challenges. Timely topic.
Yeah, it's been really in crazy world, hasn't it?
Everybody's got more challenges than usual right now, it seems.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of people are really inundated with them as well. You know, a lot of the clients that I've been getting, they just seem to be very overwhelmed with all the chaos, learning new things, like having your family all. It reminds me almost, did you guys ever see the Jetsons? And she had to make dinner, but she had to put like those little pellets into the microwave or whatever it was. And she came out and made a whole dinner and she's like, I'm exhausted. It reminds me sort of that. Yeah. Well, it reminds me of that because now we're doing work online. We're teaching our children online. Our spouses are home more. You know, everything. We're all at home, and the internet is really not fast. I mean, I was worried today because I had two times Sophia was doing school and it went down and they kicked her out of class. So I was like, oh my God, please just work for us, you know. So there are a lot of challenges that are coming in, and people, you know, they're getting kind of like, I could feel myself today start to go through some of those. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say that every life goes on. We just have to roll with it and figure out new ways to accomplish what needs to be done. And I know for me, one of the challenges has been I've never minded alone time, but this is a bit much. So I had to really get used to being alone so much, but it's better. As time goes by, I get more used to it. I hope I don't become completely antisocial. That would not be so good.
No. And so, yeah, you know, well, you always have us.
That's true. That's true.
And this is great. I love that we can do, you know, years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do Zoom or face-to-face or stuff like that. So like my daughter can speak to my parents or her brothers. And so you still have that connection with your family, you know, which is really nice. But there's a lot of changes, and how do you transform through those changes or those challenges? For me, I really believe the number one thing that has helped me tremendously always in my life is being very present. You can easily get caught up in what if this happens, what if that happens, you know, what if we go under, what if we don't have any money, what if I have no clients, what if nobody wants to see me over computer, you know, you could easily get caught up into that wave of what ifs. And so I find that when I stay very present in my moment, that really helps me. So meditating and grounding and staying present. What works for you?
Well, I think those things for sure. The first thing that popped into my head was the what ifs, like try to avoid borrowing trouble. You've heard that term. It's an old-fashioned term, but creating trouble that hasn't happened yet. It probably never will happen. So to me, like avoiding that and just like you said, focusing on what's my task, what do I need to do right now? What do I need to take care of? But another one is to not resist change. You know, change happens all the time. I know there's a saying out there. I was just telling somebody about this the other day. I may not have this exactly right, but it's something like the only alternative to change is death. And to me, death is a big change. So there's change all around us. Sometimes it's so slow that it's easier to handle and you've got time to adjust. And sometimes, like with what's going on in our world right now, it's thrust upon you. And you have to make big adjustments. So sitting there going, I want life to be the way it was. Well, of course, you know, we all would like things to be be able to go to work, be able to socialize, be able to see our family and friends. But we have to go with what's happening. We have to go with facts, and we have to put our big panties on. I'm not going to say big girl panties because there's guys who watch the show too. So we have to put our big person panties on or shorts on and suck it up and just realize this is the situation. And when we do that, no matter how we feel about it, it does help because you're not putting up the resistance and you're allowing yourself to get used to what's going on. Even if it's a temporary situation, it helps if you get used to it, make it part of your routine for now. Eventually, certain things won't be part of our routine anymore. Then we'll have to get used to going back to the way more of the things the way they were. But I think that resistance is a problem with spiritual growth, and it's a problem with personal growth.
Yeah, and there's some people that resist change tremendously. They don't like it at all. Like you were saying, they're like, excuse me, no change whatsoever. I don't do change. I'm one of those people that roll with the punches. And I also believe if you have a setback, because we do have setbacks while all of this is occurring, right? If you do have a setback, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. It's like one of those things you've got to adjust to and start to learn to go with the flow more. I used to be very type A, organized. Everything had to be bing, 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 bing. And it's because I had 3 little boys under the age of 3. I had to run my house almost like a military style house. We had to be here at this time, do this. Otherwise there would be utter chaos everywhere. So I was very type A. And since my spiritual awakening and through the passing of my son, I've learned to really go with the flow, embrace that change that comes to me. But it's been a process too. So don't beat yourself up if you have a setback or, you spend one whole day screaming and yelling. I always say, I read a quote too. It was something like, the only thing that changes is that everything changes. And it's true, it's really true.
It is, and there's something that just popped into my head from my days working in mental health. We used to do, I worked for the county, Yavapai County, and we used to do health fairs and events like that. And my job as the head of the mental health department was I would sit at the mental health table and I would give people stress tests. And that's not putting equipment on their body. It's a little questionnaire that they would answer is like, have you had this? Have you had that happen in the last, year? And it shows on there, you can look this up online, like the stress of a birth is equal to the stress of a death. The stress of a marriage is equal to the stress of a divorce. So the thing I learned about that when I was in school and through giving these is that we're already, our society, even back then, which was 16 years ago, was already at a stress level pretty high. Now you've got something like this happen that's on a bigger scale, and everyone's stress level starts to go up about this high in anxiety. So when things happen that upset people, they pop their cork easier. They fly off the handle. They're more likely to have rage, to get violent. And that's why we're seeing more instances of violence. Like I watched something on the news this morning about an altercation between 2 women on an airplane because one wouldn't wear a mask, and I don't know, something with a seat, who knows, but I'm thinking, that stuff wouldn't be happening if we weren't all at this high level. So another thing you can do, keeping that in mind that your stress level is already high, is to think a couple times before you let yourself blow your cork. If you feel yourself getting really upset, really angry, anything, whether it's at yourself or other people, just sit down, take like 10 long, deep breaths. It's amazing what that does for your body and your mind. Just take a deep breath in through your nose and blow it out through your mouth. You'll feel your whole body unwind. You'll feel yourself calming. It's not, you don't want to overreact to things just because your stress level is already high. So let's be part of the solution. Part of the solution for every situation always starts with ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think that and shielding, like we've talked before about it, we're all very empathic. And so because people are at that high stress level, it's very important for us to shield even before we go anywhere, because I know for me, I can feel it was a collective. This morning I woke up, it was very heavy energy. I was really exhausted. I was like, what is going on? So I really had to like cut my cords, shield myself, ground again. And seems like it's more than a daily occurrence now that that's happening. So shielding too is another good way if you're going out into a big crowd or to the store, wherever. Because as you said, people are really, their stress level's high, so they're really looking to everybody else. Like, why don't you have your mask on? You should have your mask on. I have my mask on. You know what I mean? And so the news has portrayed this divide between all of us. And we as spiritual people, we don't feel that divide, you know, so we sort of step back from that and we're able to send light to all that. I mean, I don't know. I have my own feelings about how everything is going on in the world, and we're going to talk about that next week, I think. But you know, shielding is another really good point. Breathing and shielding. I don't think we breathe enough either in this society.
No, we breathe too shallow because we were hurry, hurry, hurry. So this whole thing has slowed people down, which I think is something of the great benefit to society is to slow us down. So we've talked about that before, but let's look, every time you start feeling overwhelmed with change, stop yourself and think, what are the benefits I'm getting? I'm getting to spend more time with my husband. I'm feeling like our family is more of a family unit lately, like we're doing more things together. I feel like things are slowed down a little and it feels good not to be in a rush all the time. There's always good things amongst the negative, and when you can find that and focus on it, it shifts your whole approach, your whole thinking, and allows you to better grasp and what's happening and move on.
I agree. I know for us too, like we've gone back to a lot of the basics, playing board games, you know, taking that time to do family nights if we have a snack and then play a board game. You know, whereas before, and I did that with my boys when they were little. We'd have Saturday night game nights and we would all gather together and my parents would come over and we'd have a game night, you know. And so going back to that, like I really think people are starting to go back to that simpler lifestyle. You know, they're really craving, I think they're really craving, the clients that have come in have said that same thing, you know. Oh, in the beginning they were like, I don't know how any of this is going to work. But now, like you were saying, focusing on that positive and having that time with your family that we may have not had before.
Mm-hmm. And learning to get along better with each other when there's that enforced closeness too. You know, when you're spending more time in the same home. For some people, it's in close quarters. It takes some getting better interpersonal skills amongst your family members, which is always trickier because people always feel more comfortable letting it all loose with their family, and like if they were more likely to get angry, more likely to say what they're thinking. And I want to kind of circle back to something you were saying, and it goes back to that stress level being about here. Something that we can all keep in mind, and I remind myself of that too, when I do feel people's anxiety level around me, and I can feel when they're really close to blowing a gasket and getting really angry. So I go back to some of the things I learned working in a psychiatric hospital that help people, what we call de-escalate, and things that you can do for yourself is start that breathing, take a step back emotionally so that you take the emotions out of it so you don't get swept up into it and part of the anger, part of the drama going on. You take a step back emotionally and just be the observer, and it helps you not get to be part of that. If somebody engages you in an escalated way, meaning they're angry, they're hostile in some way, keep your facial expression neutral. This is neutral. You keep your voice soft and you talk to them very calmly and you listen and you know, just let them know you're listening. That just, I have seen people go from absolutely out of control to straight down to sitting down and kind of recovering. And I think the people who are awake and aware and know how to control themselves, who have a little bit better ability to step into that observer mode, have a bit of a responsibility to do their best to maintain that and not just jump into the fray of emotions that's happening out there. I have no desire to get into some argument about masks or politics or anything else. Something I've been doing lately that seems to be helping people is seek to find common ground. That's always been a good approach too, is seek to find common ground. If people are hammering on about what they believe and you believe and it's not the same, what do you both believe? What can you agree on? That's always a good place to calm things down. And
Right.
the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm hearing from people who are in households where they're isolating with their family and they don't agree on politics. So what do you agree on? Why don't you let's talk about that. And it helps everybody kind of calm down. So that's just something, I
Right.
know, a little bit off topic, but that is one of the biggest challenges we face right now in our country. And not just this country, but politics. I've always hated politics with a passion, but there's almost no escaping that right now. So that's a challenge, a way that you can handle it. And, it's likely you have people that you love, people that your family, your friends who vastly disagree from what you think. So what, are you going to stop being their family and their friends? It's like, I can't, it would take a lot for me to do that. So I seek to find that common ground, just something to try.
Yeah, and understand that everybody has their own opinion on things. Everybody has their own experience, how they have their perspective of things, Just because I'm telling you something the way I see it doesn't mean that you see it the same way. And it's more than likely that you won't see it the same way. You haven't had the same experience as me, so you don't have the same perspective. I remember my grandfathers, they would always come together at the holidays, my mother's father and my father's father, immediately on the politics. Both opposite sides of the spectrum, and holidays would just be yelling and screaming about who's right and I'm right and you're right, and back and forth. And as a child, I was like, oh my God, shut up.
That sounds awful.
But it's true. Yeah, somebody did an exercise with me the other day, and it was like they put a cup in front of me and them, and they said, which cup is first? And so I was like, well, my cup's first. And she's like, no, my cup is first. So whose perspective are you coming from? That's a really simple analogy of, my perspective, my cup is first. Your perspective, your cup is first. But, and I'm not trying to change your perspective. When you start to realize I'm not here, like when people don't believe in what we do, or, they're like, oh, well, I don't believe in channeling. Okay, well, that's fine. I'm not here to convince you otherwise. That's not my job. My job is to share my stories, share my light with the world. It's not to convince you of anything. So sort of being that type of perspective.
And that's stepping out of the emotions of it. You could go, well, I've done things to prove perfectly to you. You could take the bait, so to speak, and jump into the fray. But what good does that do? So something that I found to be really helpful, and I know why it is, I'm going to come back to this politics thing because it's such a huge issue in the country right now. Almost everybody in my family and a lot of people very dear to me feel very differently than I do. So something that I just had a realization about, and I just said it to them, is I said, the truth is we'll never probably know all the truth. That's the truth. We'll probably never know the truth of all of these issues. So, and they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, there's our common ground. I didn't say that, but I'm thinking, there's our common ground. And it diffuses things because I'm not interested in defending my belief system. I'll explain, I'll talk about things, but if somebody wants to argue or get nasty about things, it's like, no, game over for me. So
yeah.
Maybe that'll work for you, just to say something along that line, because it's the truth. I mean, we think we know, we all have our sources of information, but we don't know for sure. That's the sad thing.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. It's a good point. And I going back to next week's topic without getting too far off this week's topic, I feel like there's a couple of different timelines that can play out. So I in my perspective, I think a couple of different things can happen. So when you say predictions, it's like people are like, well, how do you really know? Or, you know, nobody really knows. And it's like you were just saying, no, nobody really knows. It's like, we're all here just trying to get along and spend the rest of our time on earth being happy and becoming one, you know? So I
Making
think
a
if
difference, helping people.
making it, yes.
I for predictions, like I'm actually getting a lot of things from the angels, and they do know. You know, it's not my,
Mm-hmm.
it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I said psychic predictions. I probably should have just said predictions, but every night when I do that nighttime intention, there's certain things that I say
Mm-hmm.
about the world, and the angels come in every single night to confirm some of those things. So I'll talk about that next week, because the angels are never wrong. They know everything happening behind the scenes, everything that's going to happen. Yes, I have psychic ability. Yes, I can do good psychic readings, but this is a lot more about what they're telling me and confirming for
Mm-hmm.
me what I'm getting psychically. So anyway, that's next week's topic.
Yeah.
But it's something I kind of want to come back to on a more personal level. Let's get away from like the big collective things and come to a personal level. I know I've had some incredible challenges in my life, like most people have, where I've been in relationships with two sociopaths. Apparently, one wasn't enough for me. And honestly, like just trying to survive that. The first one was the challenge was I was raised Catholic, and I was raised you get married and you stay married no matter what. And so I stuck it out for 10 years, even though he was intentionally trying to beat me down at every possible level he could. And I feel like a person was put in my path to wake me up to that and kind of intervene on that. And I was able to get out alive. And that was really hard to recover from, but I got very strong from that. And it really is when coming out of that is when I really started to blossom, because I started much more seriously on my spiritual journey. I got my first spiritual teacher and really started focusing on myself, my personal growth, my spiritual growth, moving forward. Um, that's not the only time though. So then I kept working on all of that. And then another sociopath came into my life who was worse. And this one came in a better package where things were more underhanded, things were more secretive. I don't know how to explain this, but I don't want to go into that. We'll talk about that topic. Terry Ann knows, like that gets into a whole different topic altogether. But the point being that coming out of that, like getting out of that relationship is when I got the strongest. And I wouldn't be here, right? I wouldn't be doing this work full time. I would not have the knowledge, wisdom, and strength to help people in the way that I do had I not gone through both of those experiences. So I truly believe, as horrendous as they were, I don't want to repeat it, don't get me wrong, but they definitely helped me grow in so many ways.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about that yesterday, that exact topic. It's like, what did I learn from those experiences? What did I take out of those experiences? You know, the good that came out of them, they actually both, you know, like you, I had also two relationships like that. Both taught me immense lessons. You know, the second worse than the first also. So we have some similarities there because I'm like you got to pound me on the head before I learn my lesson. Once wasn't enough. um, but talking about the beauty that came out of that, because it made me a stronger person, you know. And when you look back on things, and that's again talking about the blessing through the darkness, like with the loss of my son, I could sit here and I can focus on the loss of my son, or I can focus on his presence, and he'd much rather me focus on his presence than his loss. And that's something I go back to. So if I get back into that point where I'm like, oh, but I miss him. You know, today I heard his voice on an old video that came up on my Facebook, and I was like, oh, but I miss him. And he's like, but I'm right here, you know? And so it's like, if I am human, I may go back into that space, but then again, going back and focusing into that present moment, it's a different relationship. So the beauty that came out of that, again, you know, we all had, somebody said to me too, like, you've had a lot of shit. I was like, you know, I've had a hard life, and people will look at me, and it's like, how judgmental can you be? They'll look at me and say, you don't look like you've had a hard life at all, you know, look at you. And I'm like, that's so judgmental.
That
Yeah, I'm like, how could I've had the total opposite of that? You look at me and you think that I've had a perfect life. It's so far from the truth, but it's like those are people's perspective or judgments about how you look on the outside,
Very often.
so mhm.
Go ahead.
It's just, I was just saying that, so focusing again back on that beauty that came out of that. We all want to get to that place where we can, you know, and the visions I've had lately too have been about me like grounding in my energy, putting my light out there while there's like chaos going on around. And so that's really me focusing and anchoring into truly who I am and why I'm here. And that is to teach others in that chaos how you can really truly be. I don't think we've ever put enough onus onto ourselves. We're always, you said this and you said that and you did this and you did that. Meanwhile, it's like, how am I sitting here reacting to that? Or, nobody can make you feel a certain way, I always say. I just had this conversation the other day again, too. If somebody is being mean to you or disrespectful, there's usually a reason behind that. It's not about you. It's about them and the issues that they have going on. And so if you can sort of take a step back from that and realize that it has nothing to do with me, it's all about them. And so again, teaching us to go within and really truly look at our stuff. Because if we don't deal with our stuff, it's going to keep showing up on the outside for us, right?
It is. And I think a lot of it too, like what we said earlier about trying to look at like what are the positives going on right now, helps you start thinking in that way so that you can look at your past, the things that were very difficult for you, very challenging, the people in your life who are a challenge, like really looking at that, like what have you gained from it? What lessons did you get? I've long noticed, for me, the spiritual teachers who have been the most helpful for me had pretty horrendous lives. Like up until a point, like they went through challenge after challenge, serious challenges, um, just experienced a lot. And I truly think that's sort of like being put through the situation so that you can know how to help people with that same sort of situation later. So there's reasons that these things happen sometimes, not always, but reasons that these things happen. And you want to be, I was laughing. I was telling somebody, oh, I'm going to be wise next week. Why? I said, because I'm turning 60. And they're like, that means you're wise. I said, I feel like I've been wise for about 15 years now. Like I got wise about 15 years ago. And I was just waiting for my age to catch up. But if we do it right, if we're really thinking about ourselves, and like Terry Ann just said, when someone does something or says something, first thing you need to think is, do I do that? Have I ever done that? Oh, I need to focus on myself. I need to work on myself. That only happened to bring it to my awareness so I can work on me, because we're not going to fix or change another person. We don't have the power. We don't even have it in our woo-woo, no, we don't have, we only have
I like that, in our woo-woo.
or change ourselves. Yeah. And that's hard. I think it's the hardest thing anybody will do is to make big changes with themselves. And yet every single person is capable of it if they want to.
Yeah, and then when you say that to somebody, they're like, I don't do that. Well, let me go think of, yeah, go sit there and think about that for a moment and then come back to me.
I think I've done a lot of good in my life, and I still, like, when I think about things and I'll like, did I ever do that? Oh gosh, I think I might. I think I might think that way or do that. And it just helps you stop focusing on other people. Um, I'm going to bring this up again. I have helped a lot of people through getting into 12-step groups. I went to a codependency 12-step for a year, loved it so much. I've long said that everyone on this planet should have like codependency training in junior high, so before they ever get involved in relationships, and the world would be a different place. It was that
I'm with you.
But there's a thing they say in 12-step about stay in your own lane. So right now, when you're facing challenges, stay in your own lane. You've got enough to worry about. You don't need to worry about what your parents are doing, your sister's doing. That's their business. It's one thing if they need help, but don't get involved in other people's business and try to put a lot of energy and time. You're just going to drain your precious energy and achieve nothing. except annoying those people.
Right. And then it's really easy for you if you are doing that, because that takes it off of you. You're looking at them and what they're doing wrong with their life. So you're like, oh, I'm sitting over here and my life is perfect, but you're not looking at your life. You know, it's always like when you point that out to them, they're like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. Right.
It's a
It's
method
like,
of avoidance, that it's a
mm-hmm.
subconscious method of avoidance for having to deal with our own issues. It's easier
Yes.
to focus on somebody else, more fun. I'm gonna tell them how wrong they are. You're doing that all wrong. In the meantime, they've got serious issues, changes they need to make. We're talking about how to transform change or challenges. Sometimes you need to give yourself a challenge. You got to challenge yourself to overcome a negative trait, to overcome an approach, a thought process. It's hard if it's something you've been doing your whole life.
Yeah, because those are those old conditioned beliefs and thought patterns. Even though, you know, we are as far as we are, sometimes I may say something and it brings me right back to my childhood that I heard being said to me. And I'm like, whoa, like I thought I really worked on that. Like I raised my daughter totally different than I raised my sons, you know? And so when I knew better, I did better. And I explained that to people, but once in a while, that those words will come out of my mouth that I heard when I was a child, and I'm like, oh my
Oh my gosh, I just channeled my mother. Oh, I worse, I just channeled my father. Dad, if you're watching this, don't take that fine, don't take that negatively. You know we love you.
gosh.
There's so
But
many
they're
things out
deeply
there.
embedded in us.
You are, and if you had it modeled to you by your parents or other important adult figures when you were a child, they're even more ingrained. And that's true. I really think that's a big part of the spiritual journey, is realizing the things about yourself that never were true, that you just assumed were true because you were told were true about yourself, about the world, about your beliefs.
Yeah.
And waking up, peeling that away little by little. So why am I bringing this up in this particular show? Because we're coming back to that whole thing of we're not running as crazy as we normally are. So you have a little bit more downtime to think about yourself, to think about what you are not real pleased about with yourself, what you'd like to be different, what you'd like to improve, people you don't want to copy, you know, and put some work into that, and it can be done, you know. I think it's an ongoing process. Somebody said, well, how will you know when you're done with your spiritual journey? I'm like, that doesn't exist. I think the whole reason for our being is our spiritual journey, is becoming a better person all the time, just trying to be a better person and learn lessons. And this situation in the world right now, oh my gosh, I wanted to bring this up today. A dear friend in New Jersey, longtime friend, she posted something on her Facebook page yesterday to the effect of, I am sick and tired of living in interesting historical times. I think everybody would give a giant amen to that one. Are we given a
Absolutely
choice?
true. No, I think it'll be really good though. I keep going back to that. People probably think I'm crazy. I think it'll be really good, and we'll look back on this and say, oh my gosh, do you remember 2020? It was crazy. But do you remember what happened afterwards, and the beauty that came from it, and how we all came together? And we were that, you know, because I feel like society, I mean, and I'm guilty of it too. When my boys were young, I worked in corporate. It was like bigger, faster, better. You know, we went on lavish vacations and we did things without even thinking, you know, what we were doing to the environment, and you know, I never learned any of that stuff. And so when I knew better, I did better. But it goes back to that, you know, when you look at that time period in your life, like, you know, you have to work hard, struggle, do all these things that you're taught that you really don't have to do. And so now we're going to look back on that and be like, remember that time in 2020 when we had all that time in the world to actually slow down again and go back to those more simpler times? I think it'll be really good eventually.
There's quite a number of people who are taking the time, kind of taking advantage of this time, whether they're still working or working from home, or they're laid off or between jobs, who are going back to school. who are
Mhm.
taking classes with people like the Sedona Soul Sisters. I have a lot of new students. Um, I think that's wonderful because one of the positive things you can do when you feel overwhelmed is focus on something new and exciting you're passionate about. What have you always wanted to do? What have you always wanted to learn about? What have you always wanted to try? What's been going through my head lately? My mother would be laughing at this
What?
one. Again, knitting. I'm thinking, I would really like to get into knitting because my grandmother on my dad's side was this amazing knitter. Like she did the fancy cable knits and it was just like whoop, 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 nothing to her. I want to knit a bunch of stuff. I think that would be so fun. But I can't even go to the knitting store. So, but that's something I'm going to get back into. Now I'm going to tell you a funny story about that. Years ago when my daughter was 3, I took a knitting class and I knit her a sweater, and it's just got finished in time to send to her second child when he was 2 years old so that somebody could wear it. Like I finally learned how to do the neckline. So I don't have a great track record with the knitting thing, but anyway, that's just an example of something. It doesn't have to be a class or a degree. It can be just picking up a new skill, something to make you feel like you're learning, you're doing, and not, I think we have to not just work all the time. That's something I have to really watch with myself because I love my work so much that I'll work till I'm ready to go to sleep. That's not healthy. Hence, I need to knit.
Yes. We're starting a garden. We started a garden and we've not had a garden since I was in New Jersey. So, starting a garden again, it was so fulfilling to go out there and teach her, and she'd go out and she'd water them and she'd talk to them and see the little plants growing and what are they going to grow. And so, anything, no matter what it is that makes you happy. I have more time to read. I love to read. So spending more time reading is good too. Whatever you love or whatever you want to do that you haven't done.
The gardening's been a popular one. My daughter, she lives in the Chicago area, so the trick there is trying to squeeze a growing season in between winter and more winter. But they have a garden at their house, and then she was showing me. I was talking to my grandsons on FaceTime the other day, and they've been going to this creek and they got turtles, and he has a big frog and a little salamander and some pollywogs, and they had these 2 big Tupperware containers in the shade in the backyard that they decked out with rocks and water and food, and they're buying an indoor container for the frog, or no, just for the turtles. They're keeping the turtles, and everything else will be released. And that's one of the things that the boys have been really excited about. And that's been like a science project for them with school that they just took it
Mm-hmm.
upon themselves. And, so it can go in so many different directions. Like Carrie Ann, I've been doing gardening and I have way more jalapenos than any one woman needs. And cherry tomatoes, so delicious, but I've had a blast taking care of them, babying through this incredible heat, watching things grow. I mean, it's something positive, something happy, something I've always enjoyed getting my hands in the soil. Yes, Grandma Gail, I
Mm-hmm.
got that from you. And my mom. There's something very peaceful about that for me. So it doesn't mean it'll work for you, but just hopefully to give you some ideas about things to get through this time, things to help you manage all of the challenges coming at you at once.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest challenge is people who are out of work. People who are out of work and maybe not eligible for unemployment anymore. That's the hardest thing. I send a lot of prayers out to them every single night because um, that's a hard one to overcome. And I
Yeah.
think that I want to talk about that because that is such a big challenge for so many. If that's true for you, you now more than ever, it's important for you to develop that really intimate relationship with your angelic team so that you come to a place where you start handing that worry over to them and you say out loud, I trust you, all my needs will be met. All my needs are going to be met. And you can even say my needs are being met. Make it
Mm-hmm.
in the present tense. That's a game changer. It shifts the energy, and it also takes a lot of stress off of you. If you're doing everything you can, then hand it over to the angels, and you can even ask them to intervene on your behalf. That word intervene is very important. Intervene on my behalf and please keep the finances coming in for me to cover my bills and keep me afloat and fed, so that your needs are met. It's something I used to do. I still been doing it through the pandemic, is thanking my angels for making sure that my needs have been met, because I feel like that's a miracle, personal
Yeah.
miracle through this time, that my needs have definitely been met. And I feel that anybody can have that trust in their angels, but you got to start giving yourself permission to let go of the burden and hand it over to your angels who can do something about it.
Right. When everything's working out for our highest and best.
Our
You know,
favorite.
I remember back in the day, I think when my ex-husband and I had just gotten married, we bought a house and we didn't have money to get new appliances, and something broke. I think it was our dishwasher, and we didn't have money to get a new dishwasher. And it was like, oh my gosh, can, just please, help me to get through this, and talking to my angels. And before I even knew anything really about spirituality, and I don't know what would happen. Bam, a check would come in out of nowhere. And it was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And remember to say thank you, because they are there readily available for us. Everything is working out for our highest and best, and for the highest and best of everybody at all times. So trusting in that's part of that trust process. So you put it out there, right? And you have to trust that you're going to be taken care of. I tell people all the time, we were not put here to suffer. We were not put here to struggle. But sometimes we do go through these things, and we have to have that trust again. And part of that sometimes, I think, is showing somebody that you do have this support from your team, your guides and your angels.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why I love the angel work so much, why that's become the core of my work, because I think it's more critical now than anything else. Yeah, it's great. I think it's everything else we do is really great, but helping people connect with their angels is game changing across the board, for how they feel about themselves, how they feel about the world, how they handle change, challenges, how they look at it. Because if you believe everything's happening in my best and highest good, then you can kind of just relax and go, all right, this seems horrible right now, but if everything's happening in my best and highest good, I need to just trust that and see how this plays out here, and be prepared to take any opportunities that come my way. And that does happen too. So things start to ease up when we don't beat ourselves up by worrying. I think that you have a choice between worrying or getting your angels to help you with this, and starting to trust in them. It's not an overnight process. It's difficult for people at first. And something that occurred to you, you were saying something, Terry Ann, but it made me remember. I do a lot of past life readings, just not regression like Terry Ann does, but just past life reading. And it's amazing how many people who are on intense spiritual journeys now have had multiple lifetimes as a nun or a monk. And so they took vows of poverty. And those vows of poverty really that's true for me. I've had so many. So I came into this lifetime, and I didn't realize that I had this thought that I'm not supposed to have more than just exactly what I need. And you know what? For a long time, I had just exactly what I need. And I didn't have any extras. I couldn't do things other people were doing. And I was like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be for me. I'm supposed to just focus on my work and do good for people. And then my angels had a little talking to with me, and they're like, you need to sever those vows. Like, it's incredible what happens. If you want to know how to sever those vows, we can talk about that. We should talk about past lives on an upcoming show.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Next week is set, but in 2 weeks we'll talk about it, and I will tell you precisely what you need to say and do to sever vows like chastity, poverty, that can be affecting your sex life, your sex drive, your relationships, or trust issues, or your beliefs in money, and having scarcity, how to sever that once and for all, so it no longer is affecting your current lifetime negatively. And for those of you who are watching and are a little wigged out that I'm talking about past lives, well, we have some information to tell you about that on the show that will be at least highly intriguing for you. We're not here to convince you to believe things you're not ready or don't want to believe it, but we're just going to pass on some information on what we do know, what we've experienced, and I think you find it really interesting. But I want to just give everybody a chance, everybody, me and you, Terry Ann, talking did you have any questions? Okay. Tarian, did you have anything else you want to say about this topic today, this transforming challenges?
Just let's do it. Let's do it all together. Transform all your challenges. You really create your life. So, going through those challenges are necessary for you, for your growth, your expansion. So just try to look at it like that.
Beautifully worded. Absolutely. Can't add anything more to that. Thank you for watching the Sedona Soul Sisters Show. If you want to know more about us and our services, we invite you to visit our website, sedonasoulsisters.com. And tune in next week. The topic is, I'm going to change it to predictions. I said psychic predictions, but let's say predictions. And we're going to talk about the predictions that the three of us have been receiving individually, some of which we've discussed. And they are on a wide variety of things. So I think we just felt like we need to have a responsibility to share them with you. So we hope that you have an enlightening week, and we'll see you next Friday.